In addressing the plague of gun violence in our country, I do indeed think that sensible legislation is called for. I wrote about that, talked about it just recently. But there are far deeper moral and cultural issues that have to be addressed too. Most notably, that of depression among our young people. Like every other reasonable person in our society, I'm worried sick about the phenomenon of gun violence. I'm especially concerned about what it reveals regarding the status of young people, particularly young men. Time and again, disgruntled, angry, depressed, self-hating men, boys really, are the perpetrators of these awful crimes. As I speak these words, images of Robert E. Cremo, the 21-year-old who's confessed to killing 7 and wounding dozens more in Highland Park, Illinois, are circulating on social media. And his face has rather burned itself into my mind. He just looks so lost, physically, psychologically, spiritually. Now, I fully realize Cremo is exceptional. I don't tend to extrapolate from him to all young people. But frankly, evidence has been piling up for some time that youth, especially boys and young men, are suffering badly in our society. To give just one example, Derek Thompson's article in The Atlantic from April of this year reveals that from 2009 to 2021, I'm quoting him now, feelings of sadness and hopelessness among American teenagers rose astonishingly from 26% to 44%. And the increase in depression was consistent across all major categories: male, female, black, white, LGBT, etc. Here are Thompson's own words, I'm quoting again. Since 2009, sadness and hopelessness have increased for every race, for straight teens and gay teens, for teens who say they've never had sex, for those who say they've had sex with males and or females, for students in each year of high school, for teens in all 50 states and the District of Columbia, close quote. Well, Houston, we got a problem. What's causing this drastic increase in unhappiness? Obviously, there's no one answer, for the issue is complex, multivalent. But Thompson hazards 4 suggestions: social media use, the related decrease in real social contact, the stressfulness of the world to which contemporary media are giving young people far greater access, and finally, modern parenting strategies. Now, they're all interesting and worth exploring. If we had time, we'd look at all of them, but I want to focus on just one of his explanations and then offer a rationale of my own. So the number one reason he gives, social media, are making a lot of people, but especially young men and women, crazy and sad, period. This is the case first because social media produce an obsession with body image, looks, and popularity. And on the flip side, they give rise to a uniquely toxic atmosphere of judgmentalism, accusation, and criticism. Spend just a few minutes in com boxes and chat rooms on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or God help us, Twitter, and you'll immediately see what I mean. And what makes all this worse is that the devices that communicate social media were designed to be addictive. As a result, even those who admit that Instagram and Facebook are making them sad cannot stop themselves from logging on. Closely related problem is that social media are so dominant in the lives of kids that they effectively supplant activities that rather naturally bring joy. The average young person spends 5, 6, 7 hours a day on social media. And as a consequence, Thompson says, again, I'm quoting him here, compare with their counterparts in the 2000s, today's teens are less likely to go out with their friends, get their driver's license, or play youth sports, close quote. Moreover, as sociologist Jean Twenge, whom I've cited many times before, she's shown the tight correlation between screen time and depression. And I think for pretty obvious reasons. Because one of the surest firewalls against feelings of sadness is steady contact with other human beings. But the social media preclude this, locking a lot of our young people into this virtual world. I know this is oversimplifying a bit, but contrast the image of a young kid playing a lively game of baseball or soccer or something with his friends, and then the picture of a young kid hunched alone over his iPhone. I mean, which of those kids seems happier? Now, as for my own explanation of the phenomenon of teen depression, I'd emphasize a theme I've been harping on, frankly, for years, what I call the culture of self-invention. It's now a fundamental orthodoxy of the culture that values, epistemic, moral, aesthetic, are generated from within one's own subjectivity. In a word, each individual determines what's right and wrong, good and bad, beautiful or ugly, for her or for him. There's no truth, only my truth and your truth. There's nothing that's objectively beautiful, only what I think is beautiful and you think is beautiful. See, everybody, this attitude is disastrous, both psychologically and spiritually, for it essentially locks a person into the narrow confines of his own little range of experience. It prevents a young man or young woman from moving outside the tiny ambit of what she can imagine or hope for. The best moments in life, in point of fact, are those in which objective values, I mean real truths, real moral absolutes, real beauty, break through the carapace, the protective shell of one's own subjectivity, and lift one up to the contemplation of something new, something that stands rather wonderfully beyond what one even thought possible. More to it, objective goods connect us to one another. As long as we're under the tyranny of subjectivist relativism, we're each locked in the prison of our own psyches. Perhaps, tolerating each other from a distance, but experiencing no real bond. However, precisely because they stand outside of anyone's private experience, objective values can bring a plethora of people together in a common love and devotion. Again, contrast two images here. The first, an angry, isolated teen insisting that the world respect his private conception of truth. And the second, of a group of teens joyfully giving themselves together to a common purpose, to a common good. In addressing the plague of gun violence in our country, I do indeed think that sensible legislation is called for. I wrote about that, talked about it just recently. But there are far deeper moral and cultural issues that have to be addressed too. Most notably, that of depression among our young people. So, two simple suggestions. Set limits to the amount of time that teens are spending on social media. And try to introduce them any way you can to the world of objective value.